Because Bill keeps hacking it. Hello, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today's Wednesday, April 9th. It is 7:01 p.m. Thank you all for coming. This is when we do the adoption. Amy and Millie and Mona, I couldn't remember. We had that item last week on the warrant for the housing. Is that something we will do when we do the warrant adoption? Or is that something that we do this evening?
We were just talking about that.
Oh, really?
It is not agended for
Right.
tonight. We would consider it's on next week's agenda as a placeholder for discussion since the council really didn't
Right.
work through that
Mhm.
question. We have warrant adoption scheduled as a special meeting on the 23rd.
Yep.
If the council felt like they were going to have a quick decision about whether to include that item, we could also put warrant adoption potentially on next week's agenda and not hold that special meeting, or we can leave it as is.
Well,
So-
there may be members of the council who, even if they haven't made up their own minds, would be inclined to put it before the voters, right?
So I think that is something for us to talk about next Wednesday.
Okay.
And we may agenda warrant adoption for next week. And
Yeah,
if we're ready to take
I-
action and adopt, we will and cancel
I
the
would,
special.
just to be safe, that would be my
If we
inclination.
need more time, we can
Yep.
continue with
Great.
the set schedule.
Terrific. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress there.
No, that's okay.
but
We were
it was
just
one of those
discussing it.
things. Exactly, yes. So Mona, we suggested some changes. Do you want to go through where those are and what we've done here?
Yes.
Thank you.
So for this second version of the budget that we have tonight, the overall,
Does everybody have this just in the audience? Because after, yeah. All right. Great. Everybody's set.
okay,
Set up.
my microphone? Yes, you need to talk louder, speak closer. All right, yes. All right, so after the changes that we're going to go over, what we ended up with is a variance of $17,534. And so we can discuss that and adjust as needed. So the first thing that we changed, we discussed, we did have a decrease in our benefit rates. Originally, we put it in a placeholder of about 8% for the health and 10% for the dental. And instead, we got our numbers from Rhode Island Trust and they were lower. So we were able to save insurance, some of our benefit costs there. And so you'll see that change take place just across almost every
Could
expense
you
paid.
just tell us the gross number of that?
$7,516 is what the overall savings, what it resulted in, the change in the budget. We talked about the town clerk and how to present that, those wages, being that the current position is in an interim period and something that it should be temporary. And it was suggested that we change that. So we changed the clerk's wage. So we're on page 8. And so we adjusted that wage to match the rest of our non-contract or non-union employee wages, which would be their fiscal year 25 wage plus 3%, a 3% increase. The difference was $24,154, and that was moved to contingency.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to the next page 9, We increased deer management by $2,100. And that was just representative of the receipts that we have received thus far. So to match what's happening so far. And let's see, page 13. That is the police. And we moved $5,000 from the police accreditation line down at the bottom, moved that up to the seasonal police wages. So again, so far, the only real change we've had in dollars is the benefits.
That's the extra quarter person, right?
Thank you. Just,
Yes, you can stay on the police page there. And there was an adjustment to police housing. That was just a correction. We were pulling in fiscal year 24 number, and it wasn't capturing the entirety of the police chief stipend. So we added 1250. And that's what that revision is, basically just a correction.
So that number went up by 1,250.
That's correct.
okay.
Mona, what is the stipend on for the housing?
It's a total of 5,000 a year, broken up in the 26 pay periods. There's also rent deducted
Yeah,
from the
I got-
paycheck
yeah.
as well, so it just offsets
Yeah.
that.
But if the police chief didn't live in our housing, it would be the 5,000. If he lives in the housing that we have at the Coast Guard Station, there's a rent. There's a rent that's charged with it also.
Mhm.
So people understand that.
And then finally, the one that may need more conversation would be let's go to page 21. That's going to be boards and commissions. And we had discussed originally in the budget, we had extra clerk hours, 10 extra hours a week. And there was some discussion that perhaps we need more than that. And so what you have reflected here is doubling that, and that's 20 hours per week. Now, what that does is that at 20 hours, based on the union requirements or, the union entitlements, benefits, individual benefits are required, and that also increases the payroll taxes. So it's going to be a much larger jump to move somebody 20 hours.
Mona,
Actually
can
bringing,
I ask on that too? So, and you had brought this up last time, at 20 hours is the individual. What number does it go to full family benefits hour wise?
yes, I think it's 36 or 37. It's
Okay.
not 40 and it's not 35. I can
Okay.
tell you that.
But below it, certainly from say 33 down is single.
Yeah, with the option, employees always have the option to pay the
Sure.
difference and buy up. And, of course, in addition to the health and dental, we've got the pension benefits, and so that's also reflected there. What are you asking for? Yes, we did. Yep.
10 hours to that person, so that's a number. And then how much the benefits eligibility.
You want to know specific lines, like how much payroll taxes, how much of the benefits? Overall, it was, so overall, it changed by $21,000. Yeah. To move from 10 hours to 20 hours a week.
If I can add a little bit of
Yes.
context. So the net benefits are 9,700. So one of the other things Mona looked at in the analysis was, okay, going from 10 hours to 20 hours was a $21,000 increase in the budget. What would that increase be if we looked at 15 hours a week? And so that is an increase of $6,000 because you don't trigger that benefit threshold. And I wouldn't say we're trying to avoid that necessarily. That's more of a council decision. But when we think about practically staffing that, I would ask for some flexibility in, if the council chooses to go with the 20-hour number, staffing somewhere between 10 and 20 hours. I think that will give us a little bit more of a personnel base to draw from if we're not fixed at 20, but between 10 and 20.
On the same token, Amy, if we're at that 20 and that benefit is included in it, 20 to say 30, whatever,
Yep.
it might open up the pool of people that would apply because the job becomes a little more attractive also.
It may
Is
also,
that-
it can work both ways.
Right.
So that's where having some flexibility in that, I think will be important. Sometimes getting the right person in the right department can be a challenge.
But if we approve up to 20 with the benefits, then we're sort of leaving it up to you, right? Is that what we're saying, right? Like we're leaving it up to you. If you can't find someone to do the job at 20 hours a week who fits the criteria, you could alter it.
Right.
Okay.
So you're more interested in that than lowering it to 19 and saving the money in the budget? I mean,
Lowering it to 19 feels a little disingenuous to me. That's where if we're looking to reduce the budget in that way, I'd rather be at 10 or 15. That's a personal preference. 19 doesn't always sit well with me.
I think I agree. I think I agree with that.
yeah. I don't have a problem with
I
that.
also think, it's your job to figure out how to allocate this stuff, like that's the town manager's role, in my opinion. And if you find that what you really need is the 10 hours plus 3 working on new planning applications, that's fine. I think, I don't want to speak for Nancy, but I think the point she made, because she was the person who raised this, is that we hear pretty consistently that that is a spot, particularly with the new state requirements, that we're afraid is going to be constrained. I don't know, there's probably something, but that's one of those things you get a lot of calls about when things are constrained in that office. So anyway, I fairly
Yeah, And,
did that.
and even if we make it really kind of a floating time, because the short-term rentals may be focused at a certain period of time in the year, and then, that hours get freed up after a point, so they can go in whichever way it works. Leave it to your
I
discretion.
think I think what I'm hearing and what I would want to prioritize is getting the right body in there to tackle the work, as opposed to waiting for someone who fits a fairly narrow set of
Mhm.
criteria that isn't necessarily relevant to getting the job done.
Perfect.
I would agree with
Okay.
that.
Does this position do anything to help free up time for enforcement, or is this?
In theory, it would.
Good.
Again, specific to the land use side.
Right.
We haven't had that review of where building is and where land use is, but this is on the land use planning, zoning, HDC, conservation. All of those boards fall under this umbrella, short-term rentals.
I think this makes some sense, particularly with the, with the flexibility, I think is important.
So Amy, does that mean we leave it in the budget at the 20? No, okay.
I think that was a consensus, right? Keith?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
And so those are the only adjustments that we have reflected in this budget.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask, I don't see Mike here. I had raised the question about the snow blower versus the $25,000.
Yeah, he reminded me that they first had a snow blower before they went to this piece of machinery that they want to replace. They had a snow blower and it was not effective at doing the job they needed it to do, particularly when it's wet, icy, and gets compacted. So to him, that is not a solution that works.
So the total nut on those changes is 34,380 roughly. If my math is correct. Roughly.
The impact to the budget is sorry. The impact to the budget is 17,534.
For the extra hours? Or I'm sorry, I was trying to add up what we've, what, I have little pluses and minuses
Sure.
on my notes.
Well, we already had 10 hours.
We did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right,
So it was,
so it's 17 is the increase.
that is
Gotcha,
correct.
okay,
yes.
thank you. So it's, so the changes we have consensus on are roughly $30,000. That would be, no, so minus 7,500.
If you look at the summary page of the budget and you look at the recommended column,
Yep.
you'll have the revenue in the first section, the expenses, and what we changed were in the expense side. And at the very bottom, you'll see that it doesn't balance and it usually should equal 0.
I see, okay, gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We all have our own ways of warring through math.
Oh, yeah, yes.
And mine clearly is not terribly efficient, but I am what I am.
Are we going to, just so I don't jump in, are we gonna go through a couple things? I had a couple phone calls
Yeah.
on things, and then one of the things we had held out on was the mini grants. So, and I think we were looking to see what we had left and so
Right,
forth. So
right.
I didn't know.
What
the
yeah,
best
I
way-
think we should hit those. My thing is I actually did a lot of work on the early learning center, so I want to talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
So why don't we
Go by
start with-
departments? Do you want to just go right from the, is it easy just if we go?
Do you just have a couple?
Yeah, I had,
Yeah, why
yeah,
don't
two
you, why don't
things.
you go, Bill, on a
Okay.
couple? And then we'll see if it gets,
I received a call from someone, they were asking on the rec department. And I think I had the right answer on the ski trip. The ski trip is the donations come in, it's paid out, and there's really no cost to the taxpayers. Is that correct, Amy?
That's correct. And you'll see the offsetting revenue on page 4.
And then the question came up because it was, hang on a second, please.
by the way, thank you for clarifying that, because we got an email about that today from
Yeah.
someone, who thought it was a town expenditure. So,
And that seems to come up every year,
yeah,
you know, when it's
I think you raised it last week.
I did actually. Finally figured it out. So on the rec department, they were talking about because the 21%, why was that number so high? And I think as I looked at this
18.
budget, part of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, part of it is you'll notice on a lot of the salaries, there has been an adjustment based off the compensation study we had. So a lot of it wasn't necessarily raises, a lot of it was a compensation adjustment from that end of it. So I think if you look on the director's wages where it jumps up, you know, substantial of, it says 19, that isn't necessarily the raise, that's the adjustment. So I think that's a good portion of what it was. But in the handout that you had given us, to kind of call it the cheat sheet, there wasn't anything on the rec. Was there anything on the rec that that stands out besides that, or?
Yeah, the other major increases besides wage related are in the Fred Benson Beach and Ball O'Brien and Heinz Field. And across those 3 facilities, the maintenance costs have continued to escalate. When you think about things like cleaning the bathrooms at the beach, at
Right.
the Ball O'Brien, generally plumbing, electrical, any kind of repair like that is escalated in price. And this is more relevant to Heinz Field, there have been items that have been expensed in those areas for years that we haven't adequately budgeted for. So if you look at the historical numbers, we're in line with historical expenses, but we've made mistakes on the budgeting side that we've now corrected. So it makes the budget looks like it's gone up quite a bit,
Interesting.
when really it's correcting a budgeting error that's been in place for a couple years now.
In the training and travel is a good example of that.
Training and travel is a combination of lines. In most departments, there's not actually a net increase. It's just a reallocation.
So then it would be accurate to say, this isn't necessarily because of additional programs and so forth. It's accurately, a lot of it is maintenance. There's a salary adjustment we had up top, but the other is really more so, the big ones are the maintenance to those.
That is the big one. When you're talking about something like the beach and Ball O'Brien, though, there's definitely been an expansion of the service hours. So whether it's the length of the day at the beach, the length of the season at the beach, or the length of the season
Mhm.
in the Ball O'Brien bathrooms, we're really pushing the envelope in the length of the day and the length of the season, which increases then your maintenance and cleaning expenses. So, and then one other is on the camp budget, there is a proposed service expansion there. With the addition of the van, they can potentially move more campers. So there's an additional expense to bring on another counselor. That's also seen in the revenue side with additional camp tuition. So
So there's an offset.
there's an
to that
offset
also.
to there.
On the expansion, what is the length of time? Say Ball O'Brien.
I'm gonna
You
not
don't
gonna
have-
be precise, but so when it first opened, they used to close Columbus Day. Now I think they go as far into November as they can before a hard freeze.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. We've continually pushed the envelope because kids are always at the playground.
Well, have you noticed that the two people most interested in the playground are the ones with grandchildren?
Is there any, on the beach, is there any extension on those hours, Amy, you're aware of?
There has been, I can't quote them off the top of
Okay.
my head, but Dave, and I don't know if you remember. He did say the hours are longer during the day.
And season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they staying open till 8 o'clock at night?
think
when
it
they
might-
used to close at 6.
They definitely used to close at 6. I'm reluctant to say it's every night at 8 because somebody will find the day they close at 7. But it's definitely longer when it can be.
And definitely longer into the season. I mean, I think they're
Yeah.
open till almost Columbus Day
Columbus
or
Day.
longer.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the only other, because you had asked me, Keith, the only
Yeah,
one I really had was, and I think it's on our plate to talk about, was the mini grants. And I think because you don't see it in here, it wasn't because we weren't interested in funding it. I think we were looking to see how everything else sifted out, what we had, and there were some donations coming in. So so I think, once we get things settled out, I think that's something we'll want people to understand we're planning on
Right.
giving strong consideration to.
So let's talk about mini grants. Now's as good a time as any. Do you think 20,000 is the right number there? What do people think?
I think the, without having the information back, I know there's been a donation, I think, towards that's going into the mini grants.
I need
So-
to
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just need to be clear on that. That is not a donation to the town. There is a private entity looking to run its own program.
Oh, good.
So, there's a big execution distinction to be made there.
Gotcha.
So with that, which is wonderful, we may be able to achieve, remember, the goal is to achieve things through the winter for people to do. So if we have some private money that's doing something, maybe there's a little less that we would have to do from the other end of it. I'd be throwing out an arbitrary number without knowing, what.
Yeah.
Without having I know we got a quick one, what worked and didn't work. I'd really defer this back to you, Amy, with Allison as to what she thinks based on what we did this year. I'm kind of hesitant to just say, oh yeah, 20,000,
I know. Yeah.
so.
And I thought, yeah, I was gonna say, it would help if Allison could provide us with the information of the private entity. Are they intending to sort of follow suit with what was done last year? Because that information came on her memo that listed everything that we did. Because at that point, it might be smarter for us to just offer some money to that other entity.
No.
No.
I mean, so I would go back on this and say that the whole idea of this started, Kim Einlath and I were having a conversation about everybody wants a community center, right? But really the conversation was, what would we even put in a community center? Because we offer nothing. So we have no idea what people would show up for. And so you would get a room full of people who were like, well, I want this, I want this. So we said, well, let's see if we can find a way to find out, what do people show up for? What do they want to do? And what do people want to teach and what do people want to participate in? And I do think we got some good feedback. And I do think, I think we did 33,000, is that? So it was $33,000 in mini grants. Some of these, the funding doesn't need to be repeated, right? So we gave money to one group to do, to buy a movie projection system. So we don't need to expend funding for that again. They already bought that. They have that. It technically, as Amy said, belongs to the town, but they're managing it. So that won't require as much funding, but still will produce opportunities for people to watch movies. So I don't think we need 33,000. I think 20 is a good number because I think we also found things that didn't really work. And the town will have a tighter control on the money this time because of the way that the funding was set up before and the way that the grant worked. It had to be expended in a certain time frame, and we didn't really have a lot of oversight after it went out the door, as much as we would have liked to. But with town money, we would, right?
We would, although I think we'd want to be careful not to make this an administrative
Nightmare.
burden.
Yeah.
So 2 other reminders, the program that we ran had a maximum grant of 2,500. So that helps you define, we can change that. But you can award 6 grants for 1,500 each, or, we can set some of those parameters as we go. The average award amount was 1,400, with a cap of 2,500. So.
Would it make sense that, I know it's short notice for Allison, if she could give us a recommendation based on what she has for funding for this?
I guess I'm still confused about what you're looking for from her.
Well, what would she well, she kind of oversaw the projects,
Mhm.
correct? And so she'll have a good feel for, hey, listen, what worked and didn't work, and how much funding she thinks based off of the information she has from whether it be, the Rare D Fund, whoever's doing things, what she would need for this for this niche to be fulfilled for next year. I mean, when you just throw out a number, it's like I think it should be based off of something that we want to do. And I know we direct that, but she has a better pulse on it from that end of it. So she may say, hey, 15's too much. She may say 15's cutting it tight. I don't know. I just think she would have a better grasp on it than I certainly do.
So I don't think we have the time frame for that conversation tonight. I think what we do have the space for is setting a number and then deciding how and if we want to alter the parameters of the program, based on that feedback that is still coming in. That's the other part, is people are still running programs, and so we're still getting feedback.
But we don't have to do that part tonight.
We don't have to do that part tonight. So by defining that pot of money, there's still a lot of room to shape the program going into next fall. I mean, I would use a similar timeline.
So what number are you comfortable as a town manager?
Oh, wait a second, let me just toss,
Sure.
I mean, would it be possible to just put like a placeholder, like $10,000, with the understanding that we could pull from contingency if, as this whole,
If you wanted to, yeah,
Approach.
you could always add supplement from contingency if the funds are still available. Yep.
I think the programs are so popular that I'm comfortable with putting a $20,000 line item in. And then managing this spring or summer when we deal with this. And if Allison says, look, after about 15 grand, they start to fall off, I don't have any problem saying, okay, the program's going to be a $15,000 program and we put 5 grand extra in the budget, and
Yeah, I just don't want the 5 grand to roll into something else because it's there. That's the only thing. And, I don't have a problem with it being the 20,000 that fits there. But if the program only, like I said, needs 15, I'd like to see that the remainder would ever go, just not into something else. So it's kind of true to what it is from there, but,
I think 20 is a good number. I think, I, it was Allison, Amy, Dave Sniffen and I were the ones that went through the applications. We had a lot of applications that we didn't fund. I think it would be the same this year. I think we'd actually get maybe now that people understand what it is. I think there was like a
sure.
little confusion on both the like on the application end from people. I think we might get really great applications. And if somebody outside wants to fund something similar, that's fabulous. That's sort of the intent. If we primed the pump to get things going, that's good. You know, to use like traveling seamstress as an example, she purchased sewing machines with the money to run the programs, and she had really successful programs that were all full. I imagine she would do that again, but this time she doesn't need to purchase the machines. So her bid could be lower, you see? So, or at least that would be my hope.
I can support the 20, but my only thing is I'd like to just make sure we've gone through everything else in the budget and we say, okay, if we have the 20, once we've gone through everything else, that we may get adjusted, and we have it in there, I'm good with that. But, I kind of look at this as, this is like the, discretionary more towards the end. So, but other than that, I don't have any issue with the.
And when we talk about the administrative end of it, where will it fall? Does it fall in recreation? Does it fall under Allison? Does it fall under Amy?
We,
Yeah.
yeah, it will probably be a joint effort again. I think that worked well to have a screening committee that crossed all of those departments. Since she has the experience and the traction, I would probably ask Allison if she'd be willing to administer it again. And that's really on the, the follow through side. I think that's probably makes the most sense if she has the capacity.
I think, we all got an email today from somebody in the community who was concerned that this be in the budget and she didn't see it. For adult activities, some of these went to things that were geared a little bit towards kids, but the majority of them were adult.
Yeah.
And,
Community.
or adult kid, anybody could do them. And I think that that's important. And we do have a lot of kids activities, and that is feedback that we get pretty regularly. So, I think that's where it's a benefit.
That was all I had for now, Keith.
So what are we gonna put it in or hold it till we do a final vote here or a final calculation?
I mean, I think my preference would be to put $20,000 in. That's where I am.
Why don't we put it in and then if we
Right.
run into problems, we'll
Yeah,
put everything
we
together.
yeah, that's,
Because you are going to run up against the cap. So,
Yes.
I mean, depending on how many
Yes,
more
we
are.
changes we will. So keeping a running tally here will,
yes.
will
If
be
we put it in right now, how do we sit with the cap?
you would be just about right there. I'd have to
Okay.
do some, math in the $1,000 range.
Are there any other additions in it?
I don't know.
I don't have that. Yeah. Do you have any, Bill? Any additions?
No, is the only other issue I had, or not issue, concern
Yeah.
was that we have the funding to the building from the enforcement, and it sounds like we did from what we discussed. Other than that, I don't have any,
Molly, do you have any additions? Just trying to keep track of the plus side here. So none of us has any further additions. So that would, Mona, with the Deer edition, the police edition, the chief's housing stipend reconciliation, 20 hours a week that's benefits eligible, and 20,000 for mini grants, where does that take us in terms of the cap? Come on, Mona.
So we're about 3,000 over. Okay. So, just based on where those things left you.
All right.
Hi, Beth. Can you speak to some fire department issues? I guess the first one, assets on hand now of which are restricted. Do you have a number there? Total
Ah.
assets?
Total assets, I have, hang on, I have notes.
Okay.
I have cash on hand at 488,000. That does not include the investment account. But
Okay.
of that, we have committed 50,000 to the repeater system. And we have committed 50,000 to the architect's plans for the building.
Excellent.
Other than that, Mike wants to keep at least a year's operating amount on hand. And I don't know if that is what you were looking for.
That's a good start. I guess I want to speak more to the extra piece of apparatus that we have. One, it's truck 4, which is over 20 years old. And I'm kind of interested in what we've spent on maintenance on that vehicle that was not approved by the town
I don't have those
for
numbers.
acquisition.
Can I just ask a non-volunteer fire, what is truck 4?
This is an apparatus that was loaned to us for a period of time during the new engine 1, which had some problems. So that was going back and forth to the mainland. So we were
I remember.
without.
Yes, thank you.
And there
I
was a
remember.
couple other things that were
Yep.
down and the aging ladder. So I'm kind of
Uh-huh.
interested in what the fire department has spent on that truck that is over the NFPA standard.
And you're talking about engine 4, not the pickup truck 4.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I guess, and then too, with the ladder, kind of both of those apparatus with the ladder, which is, my high school days, 92, which originally was supposed to go to the Rhode Island Fire Academy for housing. And then, well, there was talk of that and it would be, kept inside. And if we had a maintenance issue, there'd be possibility that we could transport that back to the island. And now it is housed outside under the tent,
Mhm.
which that project seems to be growing. So I'm kind of wondering on the plan here with those two apparatus that are, they've served the island, but I'm wondering the dollar amount that it's going to cost to maintain those trucks.
Okay. I've made that note, Tristan, but I was not prepared for
That's
that
fine.
question, so I don't have those numbers.
Okay, how about EMTs, new EMTs this year? How many total going to school?
New EMTs, we don't have new EMTs. We don't have students
A
that
new
are
class,
becoming new
a new
EMTs.
class.
We don't have a new class set.
No interest? To
No
the
one to
public
teach it
out
either
there
right now.
looking for volunteers?
Didn't you have a big class in 24 or 25 or
No.
no?
23,
23,
we did a cardiac class
right?
of 5 students.
Which is,
Prior to that, we did a larger class of EMT. I
Right.
think it was 22, maybe 21, 22. The problem with running classes is it's expensive. We expend a lot of money and we don't get anything for that money. We might get 1 or 2 people and they drop off relatively quickly.
Hmm.
There's just not that sense of volunteerism anymore. And it's really hard. People are looking for things to do in the winter, which maybe the mini grants will solve that, but people are looking for things to do in the winter and they think, oh, I'll take an EMT class and spend my winter doing that. And then that's it. I've wasted a lot of hours, time, expense, teaching many classes that we didn't get any volunteers from. It's frustrating. And we don't have anyone here that can teach an EMT class. I can assist teaching one, but I am not an instructor coordinator, so I cannot. So that's another expense, bringing someone from the mainland, housing them, transportation.
How about attendees for firefighter 1 or 2 next year?
So firefighter 1, I do have that information. That is one of the expenses. I thought you had questions about training and communication, things like that, based on the last council meeting. So firefighter 1 is still going on right now with 5 students, and that cost from to the Rhode Island Fire Academy is $2,600 for 5 people.
For all applicants, 2,000?
2,600, yes, for the 5 applicants that we have. I know that there has been talk about running a firefighter 2 class next year. I don't know what the interest level is as far as number of participants, but that cost could go up or down.
So for EMTs, is it more cost effective to take like the one individual who's interested and just send them to a course on the mainland somewhere?
Yep. Which again, creates its own issues because when I became a cardiac, I was working for the town. I was going off Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, and all day Saturday. And I made that commitment to do that for 3 months. Whoever takes another EMT class on the mainland, whether it be cardiac or whatever, it's the same pretty much basic amount of time. 3 months of 3 or 4 days on the mainland, nights on the mainland. And in the winter, that boat schedule is horrendous to try and work around all of that. So that in itself is a challenge.
What's it, biennial? So, total EMTs on the, which one is it? Target Solutions. Is that biannual or annual?
That's annual.
Annual.
And that amount for Target Solutions is $3,000 annually. It's the EMT training platform, but there's also opportunities for firemen, which we also have doing classes on that, or it's opened up to them to do classes if they choose.
Okay. Any enrollment thus far?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's at will. I mean, I know a lot of the EMTs use it. We all just renewed our licenses in December, and that is our primary training platform.
Okay. All right. So I think basically, I think we need to get the department in here for a little bigger conversation on some of these trucks that have aged out. To know the, 3-5 year plan. We need to, basically we're trying to get everything to try to stay within the 15 years, but I'm a little bit concerned on throwing good money at some of this aging equipment.
Well, there was a request to replace engine 4. And it was supposed to go into the budget this year, the capital budget.
Yeah, but that's not a replacement.
And that has also been ordered.
Let's talk, but that can be 100% reimbursement. That conversation needs to be had.
I agree. I'm
That-
just saying,
That piece of apparatus was not approved. That was,
it was with the council's blessing that we placed that order.
is that in the line item this year? That one's removed.
No, so that's one
it's
that
not.
we touched on this a little bit a few nights ago, I think. That's one that would be a warrant question because it would be a borrowing.
Okay.
I have had conversations with the fire chief about not putting that forward on this year's warrant. It seemed a little premature, given the need to build a place to house it. And the estimated time to delivery, if we were able to take the one that is ordered, which is not a commitment. We don't have to take that one if the authorization is not there. But there is time for us to reconsider that a year from now in May of 26.
Correct. Delivery isn't scheduled until 2027 on that vehicle.
All right. Do you have any cost for the structure that's at the firehouse? Housing the ladder, the old ladder?
The tent?
Correct.
Yes. So, the tent was the complete cost for what we have standing right now. The tent, the doors, the electricity, anything that's gone into creating what we have right now is about $85,000.
Okay. Is there plans to do anything else there?
I don't believe so.
No.
I think it's weather tight, it's climate tight. As far as I know, we haven't had any issues so far.
Okay.
Can I follow up on something you just suggested, Tristan, that I think is a good idea, which is a meeting with the chief and whomever else. Because I also think that we need to have a conversation about this document that I don't know whether it was Chief Hobie or the entire department, talking about some of our challenges with laneway maintenance and getting trucks in and out. And I had when I got that, I thought, we have to at some point have that conversation and figure out what makes sense and how we would theoretically enforce the town ordinance, which is we need to, I don't know whether we need to do that at a work session or one of our regular meetings, but it should also, be a review of what the equipment needs are, because that will help us with planning. I'm the first person to say that I don't have any idea when we need a new ladder truck.
We don't, we just got one.
No, but you know what I mean. Now or I don't know, a new oxygen tank. What do I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. But I want to learn about it and spend the money responsibly.
I was going to say, with the building committee, I mean, somewhere along the way, there's got to be some determination of how much equipment there is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Has that happened yet, or is that part of the conversation?
it was done informally and we're formalizing it so that everyone can speak articulately about the current equipment and what any future equipment needs might be. And our planning a facility accordingly. It also does happen in the conversations around the capital plan. So the fire and rescue have submitted a lot of this documentation in their long-term planning. I'm sure they'd be happy to come
Great.
and talk through again, sort of it to a broader audience.
I think would also, it would behoove us too, because you do raise a lot of money, but you do spend a lot of money. Like, I think I heard you say you're putting money up for the design of the building. Is that correct, on the architectural?
Yeah, I have those numbers for last year and this year.
Yeah.
We received in 2023 for our annual appeal, $488,000, but that was an exceptional year because of the Harborside fire.
Oh, right.
In 2024, to date, we've received $236,000. So less than half of what we got in 2023. We get general donations from the fishing tournament, the Halloween party, bequests, things like that. Grants, we've been successful in smaller grants, and also the larger RUSA Fund grant, which gave us 2 ambulances. And the town contribution for 2024 was $260,000 plus the $18,000 for the fire alarm. That's roughly 45% of the operating costs of the department. We contribute the other 55%.
I'm by no means suggesting that the fire department is mismanaging those funds. Those
No,
funds are.
I don't believe you are either, Tristan. I
For-
don't.
Wait a minute, no, I just wanted to say that on the record there. I just want to understand the total cost going on with these older aging equipment that
Mhm.
the town, we voted to replace, but now we're keeping them. So I'd like the chief to defend these couple of pieces of apparatus,
Okay.
at least.
I do know he
Um,
will be back on island Monday,
And,
so he could be at next week's meeting.
So with that said, I think Amy because you know me with round numbers, I would suggest that a cut in this budget, almost to the effect that what we're looking for tonight.
$3,000? Is that what you
Maybe
were
a little
looking?
more than that,
Where do you want to cut that from?
your total budget.
It's going to come out of training then.
Well, you have some funds to pay for some of the training, correct?
Not that we planned for this year, no. I mean, if we are exceptional in donations or whatever, then maybe, but the first thing that gets cut is training. And that's a decision of the chief, not,
It
I'm
wouldn't
just-
be on any of the maintenance of those aging trucks.
no. Because you need those trucks. The Harborside Fire proved that.
Will we be having another meeting? The chief's coming back, I think, on.
He's coming, he'll be
Yeah.
back Monday.
Do we have another opportunity where the chief would be able to be here? Or are we?
I don't think
Don't
we,
think so?
I'll-
Okay.
I'm gonna yield to Amy on
No.
that, but tonight
No,
we're gonna vote for this and we're on a literally sort of almost hour by hour backing up from the financial town meeting and the notices that have to go in and the printing that has to happen, et cetera. Tonight is the night. Am I correct in that?
You are.
Only took me 5 years.
Well, it doesn't have any support, so it looks like you're all set, Beth.
This is a conversation I'm perfectly willing to have, actually, Tristan. I just,
We're still
I
having it.
just want to, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, I don't, I just,
What is the amount that we're looking to cut from our budget?
So the gap we have,
Rolling.
the gap right now is 3755. $33,755.
$3,755.
Yep.
So that could be EMT training at conferences. It could be the EMS Expo. There's a trauma expo also, where we have the opportunity to get certificates towards our renewal of our licenses. It's also networking with other departments by going to those. And it is, I just lost my train of thought. The opportunity to look at new equipment, new state-of-the-art equipment. That's a $3,000 expense that I could name right off the top of my head.
I would debate that. I mean, they had a piece of apparatus showed up directly after the fire. So that equipment, anybody selling a $500,000, $1 million piece of equipment, they'll bring it here. They want the sale. So I disagree with you there. On that one.
As far as what, are you
We
disagreeing?
don't need to travel to look at it. They'll bring it to us.
No, this is like EMS equipment. This is how we got the Lucas. This is things like that we have to purchase, things like that. But we get the training on it at these expos.
They're moving on, long agenda.
Hold on one sec.
So I'm hesitant to commit. I can't speak for the whole organization, but I do think if you found a shortfall that you could apply to the ladies auxiliary for, if this ended up being cut, you know, if, like a small amount like that could be something you could ask them to cover. Again, I don't want to commit anybody to anything, but
I wasn't aware you guys were fundraising again.
we have a meeting tomorrow, 6 o'clock.
Okay. Good to know.
All right, so we are going to, by the end of the evening, have to come up with $3,055. $3,755. Okay.
Any other questions for me? You're welcome, Tristan.
So can I talk about the ELC? So I think at this point, judging from my emails, we've heard from what may well be a majority of parents that there's a breakdown of some sort, or a dysfunction on some level. And you know, I was thinking about this last week. You know, how do you bridge that? And both Bill and Nancy last week raised this notion of needing a third party to come in, look at structure, look at board structure, look at bylaws, look at how financial decisions are made, look at audit procedures, look at reserves, and benchmark that against how other preschools of this type are structured. I sort of the other night referred to that as kind of the governance stuff, and that may or may not be the right word, but I think people get what we're talking about. So this week I called the Rhode Island United Way, because it occurred to me that that if there's a nonprofit in the state that might have some ideas, it would be the United Way. So I call and I just called their chief of staff, and I think the only word I could use was thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled to hear from us. Actually, as an aside, said we have had as a topic in our board meetings more than once recently, how do we become more engaged with the town of New Shoreham and Block Island? Because we don't, you know, they do things periodically. I think Allison has been really good about engaging them. I think that has done a lot to sort of give them a sense of what the need might be here. But lo and behold, early childhood programs are sort of one of their major focuses. And they have an entire staff that does early childhood. They've started early childhood centers. They've funded startups. They have funded ongoing early learning centers, preschools. And they said, we would love to be engaged on this. I went through a description. So my suggestion on this, and it's just mine, is that we engage with those, with the United Way. They're an honest broker. They don't have an axe to grind. They don't, you know, other than, you know, what the kids get. Really go through an exercise where the parents are heard, the board is heard, the staff is heard, probably the town is heard because we're such large contributors to it. And really start the process of making that even better than it is now. My concern, though, is I personally think we need to make our financial commitment through the community support part of the budget contingent on progress being made. I think the situation is causing enough angst in the community that that I'm not prepared to commit for a 12 months of the same thing. So, Amy, I would ask you kind of what you think the best way to do that is. But if I were waving a magic wand, I would bring in this third party, the United Way. Bring in this third party makes it sound like it's a military operation, for crying out loud. Bring in the United Way, have them do a high touch, make recommendations, have a sense of what those recommendations are, make sure there's progress being made. Look, this Rome was not built in a day. So, we're not talking about everything having to be done in 90 days. But I think that kind of continuity of effort is what's going to keep us from being kind of in the same position next April. What's the day? Next April 9th that we are today. So I don't know. That's my early learning center stuff.
Is there a chart?
They didn't say so, and I didn't get the sense that there was. No, it's not my role to sort of carve out what I'm sure there are some things that cost money if they say you really need an audit or those sorts of things. But my sense is that they've wanted to sink their teeth into something like this out here. That was what my takeaway.
I love the idea. I love the idea of having somebody who's not emotionally connected to this situation. We talked about this last week pretty exhaustively at the meeting. Before I went to bed that night, I'd heard from 2 more parents. So, and I think it was because we were talking about it.
Yeah.
So, if we had more than half of the patients at the medical center expressing that there was this degree of a problem, we would be doing something really massive at the medical center. It's almost like it'd be like the fire department saying they weren't going to put out a fire at somebody's house like we need to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because we need reliable, I think the kids let me just say,
yeah.
I know it's all about the kids. The kids love it. It's the parents that are having a really difficult time. We're not hearing from children. We're hearing from parents. So, we have to have a reliable, safe daycare that parents can count on so they can work.
Right. I also think a couple things that I would love for someone to look at and provide us with some advice and guidance. One is the idea that you've raised, which is what do other are there towns that use these nursery school tuition offsets as a potential benefit, or something to attract people to come and work for the town? Could it be an employee benefit? God, there was one other. It'll come to me anyway.
So I did express to everyone that I sort of had my big idea was that we could use some of the funding towards our union employees to create some sort of a benefit where if you were a union, in my thought, if you were a union employee of the town, you could send your child to the early learning center at a discounted rate, which would both help our current employees who we've just shown after going through our the comparison study that our employees are not paid at the same rate that comparable positions in other towns are paid. I thought it'd be a nice way to figure that out a little better for our employees and show a little bit of appreciation, but also as we have people retire and we want to replace them with someone younger, we might be able to attract somebody who sees this as like I can work, but I can also get this great benefit of my child can go at a reduced rate. I think through this budget process, we've identified that there's so many problems with the preschool that I think after that meeting last week, I gave up on my idea for this year. I still think we should try this for next year. I do think, I mean, I was hoping that it could be done with no budget impact, you know, that of the $140,000, that some could just be used differently. I would say I still have the recreation department in my sights for the same kind of an idea, where we could create a benefit for town employees. But maybe we could do that through the wellness program instead of, you know, we could figure out some other way that doesn't, I don't want it to have a budget impact.
Right.
So, but I think I'm giving up this year because there's too many other problems to address.
Any thoughts?
I'm kind of torn a little bit. And when at the last meeting, I'm kind of torn up where our role actually is from that end of it. And at the last meeting, we heard, from the people who work there and the letters we got and so forth. I like the idea of a third party, and that's why I had said that was a neutral. And I just wonder if there would be a better sign-in from both parties, the board and the employees and so forth, if it was not something we're mandated, but they signed on to because it's good for that, because it's good for the organization. Now, we may be able to facilitate it by Amy be able to say, to speak with both and say, hey, listen, this service is available. You know, is this something you're interested in, going from that end of it? And for us to facilitate that as an option for them. I'm trying to find the line where, like, where are we crossing over to, where our role is, from that end of it. But at the end of the day, I like the concept. I think for us, if we could say, hey, listen, we found a resource, we think that might help you. And if the town manager can present that to them and they sign on to it, not as a mandate, I think sometimes you might, and they may not. If they don't, then it's a different path. But if they do, I think you'd probably get better cooperation as, from that end of it.
So I get where you're coming from. I'm not prepared to vote for them for that amount of money in community service. If they're reluctant to bring in a statewide nonprofit like the United Way to do this. That's where I am on this.
And I would hope that they would be
I-
reluctant to it.
Yeah.
Trying to find the path of us not.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is the
Yeah.
only path we have is the check that we cut for a community support contribution. That's what we have.
But if we limit that amount, we're not solving the problem. We may be just impacting, the way that the operation works and the kids.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just, I was going to step back a little bit and say, I think, this idea of the mediator who can talk to both parties, the person that you have found it would be enough with the added discussion that's taken place here that you got a year to solve this, because otherwise there's going to be problems from the
Yeah.
funding end of it. I mean, it sounds good to say, you don't get the money because we've been hearing all of this, but how does that impact the daily operations of the preschool?
Well,
I don't know.
I mean,
Well-
I have, I don't know whether we technically have a fiduciary responsibility, but we have, Tristan just went through stuff with volunteer fire. Whether you agree with what they're doing with, they hold themselves to a particular fiscal accountability standard. Clearly, the medical center, based upon what we get to them, they have an annual audit. They do, we have a very clear view of that. We don't have as clear a view here on this. And, Amy was kind enough to dig out a policy that the council adopted years ago on this very thing, which has, some very clear, if you're getting community support dollars, here's what's required.
So sort of along those lines, Bill, to sort of
Molly.
answer what you're saying, the amount of money that we have proposed to give the Early Learning Center works out to just over $7,000 per family that attends. We've heard from more than half of those families that they're unhappy with the way that things are functioning, which means over $70,000 worth of our families are not happy with the way things are going. That's not good. Is that the best use of our money? You know, we're going back and forth about like, should we cut the fire department by $3,700? That's half an unhappy parent at the early learning center. You know what I mean? We have to like compare these things. Where is the taxpayers' money best spent? And I don't think that that's a bad place to spend money, but it's a bad place to spend money if nobody is happy.
I think, I mean, I philosophically totally agree with Bill. It's a weird one. It's not like we're, I don't know. The town clerk's office is going crazy and we, we impose a solution. It's not, but
I
so
vote-
it's sort of like, where are you? I'm sorry. Tristan.
Unfortunately, she's not here tonight, but I believe the director stated that she was in agreement to meet when she was speaking. So I guess I'd make a motion to keep this going, to make it contingent upon this third party.
And regular progress reports? Does that approach make sense to you, Amy?
It does.
I would second that.
Okay.
Would
so
you
the
want to do
motion-
something, I mean, could we do something, like last meeting over a liquor license, we said that we were going to reevaluate. Should we be looking at reevaluating? Or is that just too?
So I'm going to take 3 steps over to the side for a minute.
Yes. Please.
So this document that the council has, and we'll make sure to put it back on ClerkBase if it's fallen off, is a nonprofit agency funding policy that the town adopted back in 2019. And it sets out, I don't think it's quite as clear as, as you described, but it sets out some very basic parameters for the organizations that the town gives community support to. And it was the first policy the town had ever implemented of this kind, so it was meant to sort of put a fence around what already existed. It didn't add a whole lot of new strings. So it's pretty straightforward, and for those entities receiving in excess of $100,000, there are some higher thresholds, such as audited financial statements, or if you don't have an audit, because those can be expensive, then your financials need to be prepared and reviewed by a CPA, which all of our 3 major entities do. Fire and Rescue and Health Services both go the audit path. And Early Learning Center has a CPA review. Some of these we can administer more directly. So one is that meetings must be open and posted 48 hours in advance in certain public places. That's probably an element where not everybody's meeting that performance threshold. That's a policy we can enact and enforce right now. It doesn't specify how often you need to have board meetings, but this dialogue has definitely made it clear that picking up this policy as a whole on the part of the council probably makes sense, without a specific entity in mind. I don't want to conflate the two.
Sure. Yeah.
But that'll be on the agenda. But what we don't currently do, and has not ever happened, even though it's specified in the policy, is on page 2, each agency will enter into an agreement with the town for the delivery of services, including the scope of services to be provided and payment arrangements. And so if the council were inclined to put some contingencies on funding with the ELC, the best way to do that is probably through a written agreement, so everyone's on the same page about what those are. And they probably shouldn't be too detailed, but open and engaged participation with an entity like the United Way to review governance and operations of the organization. And then spelling out who's monitoring, who's reporting, and then what happens if those criteria aren't being met. So I guess what I'm saying is if there's an inclination to put contingencies on the funding, that's the mechanism I would use.
So
And we
instead
would
of this
continue to work
motion,
through that.
we should make a motion to fund it, but we would like a written agreement pursuant to the town's policy. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I
This is a
think,
mechanical
I think your
question.
motion can go either way, but I think whatever those contingencies you might describe tonight will take a more clear form going forward so that there's not confusion about how we administer it. If the council wanted to do that.
So Amy, this would be with, if this were the case, this would be an agreement with the board, correct?
Yes.
Because the board is the one that,
Well,
the board, correct? Yeah.
without having their bylaws in front of me, I can't answer that. In most organizations, it is with the board. That may be one of those anomalies at the ELC.
Yeah, they have a membership vote too. I looked at the bylaws, so it's a little.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
So there was no second, so I don't need to.
I seconded it, but.
But it was
then-
rolling. So I
yeah.
guess I would retract my first
And I'll
motion
withdraw my
and
second.
just make it contingent upon the town's policy on file now.
So subject to a written agreement.
And we're working on the premise that the United Way isn't charging for this, but if they are charging for this, I would suggest that the fee come out of the town's payment to the Early
Right.
Learning Center. Out of the 140, what is it, 147?
Okay.
141.
Kim?
My comments are just out of interest from being here, but I have three comments. One is, I sort of remember that the board has to have a town representative, and do they still?
They do.
And the medical, you have a management agreement with BIHS to manage the medical center. It doesn't sound that different than an agreement with the Early Learning Center. And my more technical question is, you're talking about the town budget, that the people of the town vote on and say, spend that money or don't spend that money. So how can, I mean, I think you've passed that point, but when you're talking about making the money contingent on them doing something, how can you do that when the budget is really the people approving it
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
weighing in on that? That's just some observations from the back row.
No, it's,
I actually did think
Yeah.
about that. And if, again, without trying to get too far ahead of the council, if there were an inclination to put contingencies, I would expect to bring a draft of that agreement to financial town meeting again, so everybody
Yep.
understood.
great. Terrific. So motions, is the motion, do you understand the motion and? No, Tristan then made a second motion. That's all. Yes.
Contingent to the policy that the town has on file now.
Basically pursuant,
Just,
I would make a motion that we include the funding, but that it would be pursuant to a written agreement consistent with the town's policy on funding of community support entities.
Well, how do we vote at financial town meeting if we don't have that by then? I mean,
So a follow-up question then. In this agreement, do you expect to still have a contingency about participating in a third-party review?
I do.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's probably important to say out loud tonight. even though mechanically it might happen later.
Yes, I would add to my motion.
And I feel that a third party review, that they're open-minded to that, to consider. It doesn't necessarily have to be United Way. Hopefully it is.
Right,
You know what I mean? But the willingness to, because I really want to get the
That
personnel stuff
includes-
off of ours and into someone who's qualified that can actually help them. And the bottom line is, I want to make it so that they want to have ownership on this, not that it's being forced down. So.
Millie, are you square? I can get there. Okay, you can get there? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no.
I would,
Uh,
I think it would be helpful, though, if we asked Amy to follow up with, we had Julie and Tracy here the other night, give them kind of a heads up before something gets surprisingly. put
Yes,
in
no,
front of them at
I'll
the-
give them a rundown of
Good.
what we talked about tonight and get started on the next step.
Yeah.
So we're looking for $3,755. What do you got?
I still have a personal objection, as you know,
I
because.
share your personal objection. And the 18.6 is what the cost was last year for the 4th of July and the August long weekend. Chief Dean felt like that was representative of what he needed and what he would be looking for again this year, meaning it wasn't an excessive presence. So I would be reluctant to go below that 18.6. It may have even escalated based on wage increases. So I wouldn't take away more than $1,000, $1,500.
Well, 1,500 helps. So, based on what Amy just said, I'd make a motion to reduce the state police payment by $1,500.
Is there a second? Hold on, just hold on before we make a motion.
I'll second it for discussion. The reality is though, if it comes over, we're gonna pay it anyways, you know what I mean? So, and then hopefully there'll be something left within the budget. So it's not gonna be the thing of, oh, turning a trooper away at the boat and say, don't come. So I think it's not, I think that's not unreasonable from that end of it.
So you're in favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor of
Okay.
reducing that with the understanding that, if that line item comes over, hopefully there'll be something within that, whether it be on the reserve offices or whatever it might be. Remember, we just moved $5,000 from the contingency, from the
Accreditation.
accreditation up to the wage line. So there's a little bit of room in there, and I trust the town manager will be able, as we get down the line, be able to adjust whether that on the $1,500.
Yeah, and if the bill comes in higher, we can always discuss contingency to pay that bill when it comes, but for the purposes of trying to.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All
Okay.
right.
My other,
Come on, you're on a roll, Dodge.
making enemies, right? We'll have to switch it with, yeah.
You do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this is this is our legal line item and is no reflection at all on the, service that we've been getting from James and Nick, but the, administration, yeah, 54. The litigation has been reduced. but I was wondering if we could take $1,000 or $2,000 out of either one of those, or both, one, a little bit from each of the consultant legal and the consultant solicitor litigation. Looking back at some of the numbers, aside, with the intention to stay away from lawsuits, as best we can. And with our stated intention back in January to keep the meetings limited.
So I have a different idea.
Okay,
I think we should go to community support. We need $1,245 to hit it on the nose, right? Do I have that number right? Mona? Do some of that math stuff.
27.
I think we should take $700 from the medical center and $700 from the volunteer fire and rescue. That gives us $1,400. Those are two very large checks. So the practical impact of a $700 reduction is not gigantic.
That's a motion. I'll second it.
Okay.
Do you hear that? I just want to make sure that gets us to the number. When you look at me like that, I get really nervous about whether I've done the math.
700 from the
I
medical
know-
center and 700 from the fire department.
Yeah,
You can set it on the fire department.
and 700 from health services.
And I might add, I know in past years, both of those, we had made some cuts and
They
and
volunteered.
they volunteered and they're very good about it,
Yeah.
so. And they have other donations that they've had so far, so hopefully it's doable on their part.
I just feel like I might have missed a number somewhere.
That's what I'm thinking, so.
Okay.
Make that $3,755.
Yep. We've taken away 1,500, which leaves us with, oh, yeah, right.
So you
Yeah.
were looking for 2255.
I was looking for 2245 or 2250.
55. Yeah.
2255, and I didn't get there, did I? I'm gonna withdraw my motion. Will you withdraw your second, Bill?
I'll withdraw the second.
So
Well-
we need 2245,
2255.
2255.
2255.
But if we stick with your motion, we're still looking only for $855 someplace. It's
You and I are the only ones who have walked the plank here, Dodge. I just want to say that for the record.
Again,
Expand that to include the early learning center, and you took $752 from all three. Is that right? Okay.
Make that a motion? Want to make that a motion?
You want me to make that?
Yeah.
Then that means 2 years in a row, I'm the one cutting the money at the early learning center. But
Yeah.
sure, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill
be
doesn't like
jerk.
that.
I think we had talked earlier about the mini grants and we had said 20 and we said, we move it down. I think we should try doing the 1,000, what, the 1,000 we have to make up?
Yeah.
On the mini grants.
So that'll be 19.
Yeah, that would be 19. And then I think.
And
we
the
can-
700 each from,
For the fire department and from the medical center.
yes. I would make that motion. Did we get there? Yeah. Or a clean slate. No,
No.
she didn't.
Bill,
No,
I
she
did.
didn't. She didn't. She complained about it.
I made a motion, 700 from the fire, 700 from the, and then the difference, the 1,000 from the. mini grant.
There's still a motion on the floor from Mr. Payne to cut the fire. That was never
No, I was not.
withdrawn.
I can withdraw.
I will draw my second.
So this motion is 700 from the fire department, 700 from the medical. We already did the one for the state police. And what's the third piece of that? Am I
Mini grant.
Your mini
mini
grant,
Grants from the mini grants.
5,000 from the mini
No, no.
grants?
No, 1,000.
1,000. Gotcha.
Wellness program.
Mhm.
It'll be one that you liked. Does that get us to the number?
yes.
Motions have been made and seconded, right, Millie? Yes. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Are we prepared to vote? Can I have a motion to adopt the Town of New Shoreham FY 2026 budget for submission to the FTM?
So moved.
Second.
And can I just ask, does that put us right at 4%?
Yeah, that was what we're.
Yeah.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Before we move on, we have plenty of opportunities to do this. Don't always take them. But I think the work on this budget by you, Mona, by Amy, by others has really been extraordinary. New roles, changes, questions about what government funding was going to be. I mean, it is not a great atmosphere. And one of the things that I really admire is that you, Amy and Mona, I think, made an appropriate policy decision to not bite off more than we can chew. And I just really appreciate the work that you've done, and just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, from all of us.
Item 3, discuss an act to reconsider the motion of March 27, 2025 to adopt the resolution seeking legislation to increase the Block Island landing fee. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Yeah, I'm gonna recuse on this.
Yeah.
one.
From 50 cents to $1.75. Now, we received, I think you sent it out, did you not, Amy? An email from Interstate, and basically asking us to reduce our ask to $1. And I thought both the tenor and tone of that email, and in a manner consistent with what I think we all want, which is a positive working environment with Interstate. I am prepared to make a motion to reconsider, and then to, in item number 4, modify the resolution on the landing fee to go from 50 cents to $1. So having been in the prevailing side of the initial motion, I would make a motion to reconsider.
Second. Can I second it? Yeah.
So I said what I want to say. Anybody else? Any other comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Matters now before us. I would make a motion to change that previous resolution. Is that the right way to do this, Millie? From $1.75 to $1.
I'll second that.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Hey, Bill. Oh.
Been gone for a long time. And Josh and Jess, thank you both for coming tonight. I think we all need to work on reestablishing what was
This is a motion to adjourn that he's coming back for. We're not doing number 5, no. For, just in time for the motion to adjourn. Have a motion to adjourn. Did you second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no.